You need a truck, you need a driver, you need insurance to start a trucking business. That's it, right? No, there's so much more that goes into it, and I had no idea how many things you needed to buy, how much paperwork you needed to file. I want to show you some things that I've just bought recently for my truck. 100-foot extension cord. I am ashamed to admit this, but I had no idea I had to plug in my truck when it got cold to keep the truck, I don't know. I got an iPad, so that way my driver doesn't have to use his cell phone to use the GPS. So I got the iPad and I got cellular data for $50 a month. Not too bad. And then the last thing I bought recently was a mount for the iPad. That way the iPad can be secured to the dashboard. I've learned so many things since starting my box truck business almost a year ago. And that's the big reason why I started this YouTube channel, so that I could share with you guys things I've learned, things I'm doing now, and hopefully it helps you start your box truck business or make your business better. In the beginning, I went straight to Google, I went straight to YouTube, and I was asking a bunch of questions because I didn't know anything when I was getting started. And I wasn't really finding the information that I wanted. I wasn't finding specific answers and actionable items to the questions that I was having. The big thing that I hope you guys are able to take away from my videos is I hope you guys learn something. I hope you're able to watch my videos and then implement my tips and tricks into your business. That way you guys don't make the same mistakes I do, and we can all be successful box truck business owners.
Don't wanna sleep in, cause I got something to prove. I gotta take what I hate.
What's up everybody? Welcome to the video. In this video I'm going to talk about 6 things. Fuel cards, factoring companies, hiring and paying driver, maintenance, ELDs, and lastly, DOT safety audits. I've learned so much since starting my business, and I'm going to share with you guys things that I wish I knew whenever I started. That way you don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. First of all, fuel cards. So I got suckered into a fuel card with my factoring company, and they promised me better rates, better cost per gallon for fuel. They promised me huge discounts like 40, 50, 60 cents off per gallon, and I believed them. I thought, wow, that's incredible. Let's do it. Why not? But there's a couple things they don't tell you. So specifically with fuel cards, you're typically locked in to a specific company or specific gas station. So if you get a fuel card with BP, Exxon, or Shell, you're probably only going to be able to go to those gas stations or get the discount from their specific gas stations. Couple things with that. It can be hard to find the gas station that works with your fuel card. And second, sometimes those gas stations actually charge you even more than the other gas stations. So the discount you might be getting is just going to balance out with the overpriced diesel. Another thing I didn't even realize, the fuel card I was using in the summer, they were charging me a $10 fee every time I was using an out-of-network gas station. So any discount that I was hoping to get was completely wiped away by this $10 fee every time I was filling. This might work, and it can work, and it has worked with people that I've talked to if it's just you. If you're the only person driving, and if you want to plan your route around these specific gas stations, and if you want to take the time to do the research and be 100% sure that you're going to the correct gas station, you really can save 30 cents a gallon and you can avoid paying the fees. But what I found with hiring drivers, it was incredibly difficult to explain to them and to make sure they were following where they needed to go to get gas so that they could get the discount and avoid paying the fees. I want to talk about one fuel card that has been really good to me, and that's Fuelman. You're not going to get a great discount with Fuelman, but you can go to not almost any, but you can go to a lot of the gas stations all over the country. Your driver won't have to drive miles out of his way to get to whatever gas station that accepts your fuel card. Another good thing is that they're net 7 payment terms, so you get a 7-day buffer. So if you buy diesel on Tuesday, you won't have to pay it off until the next week. It's really easy to use this fuel card if you have a driver driving for you, because he just downloads the mobile app and he checks his location, finds 5 to 10 gas stations within a 1-mile radius of where he is, and he can go almost anywhere. And what's really cool about Fuelman is they give me weekly and monthly reports. So I can see exactly how much I spent on diesel, and I can see where my driver got fuel, and I can also see miles per gallon. That's great for planning for our cost per mile. So we know what our miles per gallon is, and we know how much fuel, and we know how much money we're spending on fuel every day, every week, every trip. Another option for fuel, if it's just you, maybe just get a business credit card. You can go to any gas station, and some credit cards offer 2 to 5% cash back for gas stations. If you can get 5% cash back, that's probably gonna beat any fuel card discount that you could possibly get. The one thing, if you have a driver, I wouldn't necessarily give that driver free access to an American Express business credit card. You just never know what might happen. But if it's just you, why not? Just get a business credit card. The second thing I want to talk about is factoring companies. I know, I've talked about it a lot. If you've watched all my videos, you've probably already heard most of this information. But I want to compile everything I've ever said about factoring companies, everything I've ever learned about factoring companies into like a 2-minute explanation, pros and cons of factoring companies. And what's the alternative? First thing that they try to hide from you is that you potentially, depending on the factoring company you use, will be locked into a 12-month contract. That means you are stuck with this factoring company for 12 months, so be careful. Second, factoring companies don't really care if you get paid, because no matter what, the factoring company will get their money back from either you or the broker. So if they front you the money, if they loan you the money and the broker doesn't pay after 120 days, they're just gonna take the money back from you. So the factoring company doesn't really go out of its way to put pressure on the broker to make sure they get paid, because they don't really care at the end of the day. They're still gonna charge you fees and they're still gonna get their money back whether the broker pays or not. So what I do all the time, as soon as my invoices get to 30 days old, I myself am emailing the broker saying, hey, what's going on? When is payment? Where is the money? My factoring company hasn't received it yet. So I'm doing the job for the factoring company because I want to make sure I get paid. The thing that I heard the most whenever I was working with factoring companies and trying to find someone to work with is every factoring company's salesperson said to me, oh, the broker's not going to take you seriously. They're much more likely to pay us than they are to pay you. I have never had an issue with a broker refusing to pay me. If anything, the factoring company has actually lost payment provided by my broker. So it's been more of a headache because the factoring company can't even keep track of ACH direct deposits and checks that are being mailed to them. So if anything, I truly believe it would be easier to get paid if I just went to the brokers directly instead of working through the factoring company. The last thing about factoring companies specifically is they hold reserves. So once your invoices get older than 60 days, they start holding on to $100, $200, a little bit of money every invoice you factor after that. So you're going to start losing money on every invoice the older your outstanding invoices get. Now, I want to talk about an alternative, and that is a line of credit. I understand not everyone will be eligible to get a line of credit because it will depend on the age of your business. It might depend on your personal credit score, and it might depend on your tax returns and how much money and how profitable your business is. But I want to talk about it because you might be eligible and it could potentially save you a lot of money. So that's lines of credit, a line of credit. You can get it from almost any bank, and a line of credit just enables you to pull money directly from a loan at any point. Typically, lines of credit are anywhere from like $5,000 to $20,000 when you're just getting started, and it's just free access to cash. I don't want to use the word free because it's not free. They're going to charge you interest, but it's readily available cash. You don't have to go through a lengthy loan application process just to get cash. I don't want to go into a lot of details explaining what a line of credit is, but I want to tell you the difference between using a line of credit and a factoring company. So I'm going to put up on the screen here kind of a breakdown of potential interest paid to a factoring company and interest paid to a line of credit. So bear with me. It might get complicated, but I really think this is important for you to understand. So let's use, for example, $2,000, $20,000, and $200,000. The factoring company will charge you probably 3% to loan you the money until they get paid by the broker. A line of credit is typically anywhere from like 5 to 10%. So let's use 8% as an average. But keep in mind that 8% interest rate is an annual interest rate. So if you only take $2,000 from your line of credit And if you pay it back 30 days later, you're only going to be charged 1/12 of that 8% interest rate. So on the screen here, I have 0.67 as the monthly interest rate. So if you use this line of credit for cash flow for your business, because I know brokers don't pay in 30 days and we have bills to pay, so you need cash. So what you can do, let's just say you are running $20,000 worth of loads this month. As you need the cash, you can pull out $2,000, $4,000, $6,000. The really big takeaway here is that factoring companies are charging 3% to instantly loan you the money. 3% upfront for a loan is an incredibly high annual interest rate. With the line of credit, you're only going to be needing the money on a monthly basis as you're waiting to get paid. So if you pull out $2,000 now from your line of credit, pay it back next month, you're only going to pay $13 in interest on that $2,000. But the factoring company is going to charge you 3% right from the beginning. They're going to take $60 just to loan you $2,000. That's an incredibly high interest rate for a very short-term loan. Now, with all that being said about the line of credit, if it's just you, I think this line of credit is a great alternative because chances are you probably won't need more than $20,000 per month. You're probably not running a whole lot more than $20,000 worth of invoices every single month. But if you plan on adding 2, 3, 4, 5 trucks, you might not be able to get enough of a line of credit to sustain cash flow for 5 trucks. So keep that in mind. Talk to your local bank. I worked with Wells Fargo and I got approved in like less than 10 days. Talk to your local bank, your local credit unions. Talk to the big banks, the big national banks. If your credit score is above 700 and you have decent, strong tax returns from the past 2 or 3 years, I'm fairly confident that you will be able to get a business line of credit and you're going to save so much in factoring fees and interest paid. My goal is to hire drivers, buy more trucks, hire more drivers, and grow my business. Some owner-operators just want to have one truck and they just want to drive for the next 20 years, and that's great. You're going to make a lot of money. But a lot of my videos are geared towards other people who want to grow and invest in their trucking business. So in order to grow your business, you're going to need to acquire more trucks and hire drivers. In my experience, hiring drivers has been the most difficult and challenging process of the entire business. Right from the beginning, you have 2 options whenever you hire a new driver. They can be a 1099 contractor or they can be a W-2 employee. Technically, anybody who works for you full-time would be considered a W-2 employee. Whenever you hire a W-2 employee, you'll need to pay workers' compensation insurance and you'll need to pay tax on their payroll wages. It's typically like 7%. It's comprised of Medicare and FICA. Workers' compensation insurance for truck drivers can be pretty expensive. But if you hire an independent contractor to drive for you, you would be giving them a 1099 at the end of the year. You won't be responsible for having workers' compensation insurance for them, and you won't be responsible for paying their payroll tax. I think hiring a driver in the beginning as an independent contractor is a great way to get started. It'll be easier for you. You won't have to run payroll. If it doesn't work out, no strings attached. You can cut ties with that driver. If I were you looking to hire drivers, I would at least explore the option of hiring them as an independent contractor in the beginning. However, my biggest piece of advice is make sure you have a written agreement with this driver. Make sure you have a contract with this driver. Talk about everything that could potentially go wrong. Explain every detail you can think of. Is he going to get paid for deadhead miles? What about hotels? Will he be reimbursed for expenses? What happens if he damages the truck? It's always better to have it in writing in the beginning. That way, just in case anything bad ever happens, you'll have documentation. And that way there's no confusion. We always hope and assume that things will go really, really well. But in the event that there's a question or there's confusion, it's best to address everything in the beginning. That way your driver doesn't get upset. That way you don't get frustrated. There's a couple different ways to pay your driver. three ways. You can do cents per mile, you can do hourly, or you can pay them percentage of revenue. I want to talk about paying your driver hourly first. I've seen a lot of local deliveries get paid hourly, but I don't really see over-the-road long-haul drivers getting paid hourly too often. Chances are you're going to lose a lot of money because drivers work typically 14 hours a day, 5 days a week. So that's going to be 70 hours a week, and if you pay them a reasonable hourly wage of $25 an hour, you're going to end up spending probably more than you would if you paid them cents per mile. And also, there's no real incentive for your driver to drive if he's getting paid hourly. He's probably going to take a long time getting loaded and unloaded, maybe take a few extra minutes fueling up at the rest stops. I like paying drivers either percentage of revenue or cents per mile. That way they have some skin in the game. He's motivated to drive 500-600 miles a day, and he's motivated to take those high-paying loads. That way, if he's making money percentage of revenue, he can maximize his profits. Whenever you're just getting started, it's almost impossible to know how much to pay your driver. If you have no experience, how do you know what's a reasonable wage? And I did a lot of research in the beginning, and I couldn't really find good information. There was always a significant range. Truck drivers earn anywhere from 35 cents per mile up to 85 cents per mile, and that helps nobody. That information is not useful at all. What I'm going to tell you is if you're paying your driver 55 cents per mile, you're going to struggle to make money. Your driver's going to be really happy. Your driver's going to make a lot of money, but you as a business owner will struggle to make money. That's just based on my experience and what I've seen. If you pay your driver 45 cents per mile, your driver still has the potential to make almost $1,000 a week, which is a pretty good paying job. $52,000 a year is above average, certainly, especially for a non-CDL driver. 45 cents a mile, and your driver will make decent money, and you as the business owner will be able to be profitable. We need to talk about hotels because per DOT regulations, your driver is not allowed to sleep in the truck unless you have a sleeper cab, which most box trucks don't. So your driver's going to need to stay in hotels. Hotels can be expensive, anywhere from $50 to $150. You have a couple options. You can pay for the hotels directly, or you can have your driver find a hotel and you can reimburse him for it. Or here's what I do, and this way there's no questions, no confusion. I pay my driver a stipend every single day while he's over the road. I pay him $75 for a hotel. He can pitch a tent and sleep on the beach, or he can stay at a 5-star luxurious hotel. It's up to him. I pay for 4 or 5 nights a week, and then if he stays out on the weekend, he pays for 2 of his hotels. So he's getting an extra $375 a night just to go over the road and stay in hotels. Now, the last way to pay your driver is a percentage of revenue. This is definitely the easiest way to pay your driver. You're not calculating miles, you're not keeping track of hours, you're just looking at your rate confirmations and you're giving him a percentage of revenue. I've seen typically, I think 25% on the low end and 35% on the high end percentage of revenue. Typically, box truck drivers are making like $2 a mile. So if you think 25% of $2 a mile is about 50 cents per mile. With paying your driver a percentage of revenue, I would recommend letting your dispatcher and driver work more closely together. I think if I were a driver and I were getting paid percentage of revenue, I would want some say as to which loads I'm driving and which loads I'm not driving, because at the end of the day, that is directly relating to how much money I'm being made. So if you're going to pay your driver percentage, I would let my driver look at the rate con. I would let my driver work out with my dispatcher. The last thing I'll say, and I already touched on it briefly before, but just be really clear in the beginning. Clear communication will alleviate so many problems down the road. And lastly, make sure you're keeping track of his paycheck. So every Wednesday, I send my driver a breakdown of which day, where he was, how many miles he drove, and did he stay in a hotel. I send it to him every Wednesday, and then I pay him on Friday. That way he can see and he can dispute if he has any questions or concerns. He can see exactly what he's getting paid for. So keep track. Don't just write your driver a check without documentation, without information backing it up. Because if there's ever a conflict, if there's ever confusion, it's always best to have more supporting documents. That way you can answer all the questions and you can be clear and you can communicate effectively. I want to start off this segment by saying I know nothing about trucks. When it comes to the engine, when it comes to the transmission, repairing anything, I'm really, really bad when it comes to cars and trucks in general. So I was really nervous to have maintenance issues with my trucks whenever I started my trucking business. But what I found is, honestly, my maintenance hasn't been quite as bad as I thought it would be. I budget for my maintenance every single day, every single load that I run. Whenever I calculate my cost per mile, I'm planning for maintenance before it happens. So a good calculation for me is 10% of miles for my cost per mile calculations. So if I'm running 2,000 miles a week, I figure I'll spend about $200 a week in maintenance. That's been roughly somewhat kind of accurate. It's hard to know for sure. I've only been running for 10 months, so I'm not entirely sure what my average maintenance expense is going to look like, but I think 10% of total miles driven is pretty close for my calculation. The most important thing is obviously an oil change. I get my oil change every 8,000 miles, which ends up being almost every single month. My driver goes OTR, drives 2,000 to 2,500 miles per week, so I'm getting my oil changed almost every single week, every single month. And whenever I get my oil change, I also get my fuel filter changed. And depending on where my driver is, I have the mechanic do a thorough inspection of the entire truck during the oil change. If he's over the road at some random shop or truck stop, I just do a quick oil change and I accept that. But whenever he's home, whenever the truck is going to my usual mechanic, I'll have him do a full thorough inspection of the truck, catch anything that might be wrong with the truck. That's really all I do for routine maintenance, oil change and fuel filter change, along with the thorough inspection. There's always little things that come up, but I think once a month is a pretty good routine, a pretty good schedule for maintenance for your truck. Typically an oil change costs anywhere from $300 to $500 for me, depending on where I am. If I am over the road at a truck stop, it's usually a little bit more expensive. If I'm at my local shop, it's usually cheaper just because I've worked with them for a long time now. In the beginning, I wanted to do my own oil changes, and I thought that was a brilliant idea. But what I found was that my driver wasn't too thrilled about the idea of doing an oil change, and that was fine. I hired him as a driver. I didn't hire him as a mechanic. I think it's unfair of me to expect my driver to change the oil. If you're an owner-operator and you're driving your own truck, absolutely, I would change my own oil if I were driving my own truck just to save a couple $100, because you can buy the oil and you can buy the filter and you can do it yourself for really cheap. You're just paying for supplies. But the other thing, I like the peace of mind knowing that an actual mechanic is looking at my engine, looking at my truck every single month, especially with how many miles and how much wear and tear we put on our trucks and how important maintenance is and how terrible it would be if I broke down in the middle of a load. I think it gives me peace of mind to know that an actual mechanic is doing the oil change and changing the filter and looking over everything on a monthly basis. When it comes to maintenance, I think I'm going to buy a new truck in the future. I'm going to go that route because new trucks, obviously, you're going to spend less on maintenance. They're more expensive up front, but if you can keep the truck for 3 or 5 more years than an old used truck, and if you can spend less monthly on maintenance, the truck's more reliable. I think buying new trucks is the way to go. It's what all the big companies do. Obviously, Penske and Ryder, they're buying their trucks brand new, and then they're selling their trucks after 3 to 5 years after they put 500,000 miles on the truck. So if they're doing it, it must be the right way to do it. The only issue is, do you have enough money up front to buy a new truck? And are you able to get a loan to to buy a new truck for $80,000. Two things are going to happen when you buy a new truck. You're obviously going to save money on maintenance. The big way you're going to save money / earn more money / keep your driver is by not losing time driving. If I were a driver, I'd be very upset if my boss told me, hey, you can't work this week because the truck's in the shop. So you not only is your driver going to be unhappy, but you're also losing money because you're not driving. Your company's not making any money while your truck's in the shop. So you're going to save money on maintenance, and you're going to make more money because your driver and your truck will be operating more frequently. Last thing to say about maintenance is pre and post trip inspections. Impromptu Q&A. I only got one question on my YouTube post. So Travis, you asked about pre and post trip inspections and specifically doing it with your ELD. Me personally, I've never done a pre and post trip inspection, but I do know with the Keep Truck and ELD, you can enter in information for a pre-trip inspection. It's not required per DOT regulations, but it's super important to do. Pre-trip inspections and post-trip inspections can help you and your driver catch anything that's wrong with the truck before you start. I don't have a specific template for doing a pre and post trip inspection. I know you can get them from most logbooks. I know you can get them on the internet. I would watch some YouTube videos from mechanics on how to do a pre-trip inspection. I don't know how to do a pre and post trip inspection, but I do know they're very, very important. And I also know that if you have a driver driving your truck, he's probably not going to do a very good inspection. So you can train your drivers, you can expect your drivers to do it, but at the end of the day, they're only getting paid to drive. They're not getting paid to inspect the truck. All right, now let's talk about ELDs, electronic logging device. So I was a little confused whenever I first got started, and you might be too. I did not think I needed an ELD. I thought I could run paper logs and it would be fine. What I found out, luckily I did not find out the hard way. I just found out on my own. I never got a bad DOT. I never failed a DOT inspection, but I got a Keep Truckin' ELD because I found out that I needed to have one if, and here's the only caveat, if you're driving more than 150 air miles away from your business address. Even if I wasn't required to have an ELD, I probably would still have one because of the awesome reports that it generates. Only if you have a driver. If you're the only one driving your truck and you're not going outside of 150 air miles away, don't worry about it. But if you have a driver, it's so nice to be able to check the GPS, to see where your driver's going. Your ELD can give you so many cool reports. If you have to file IFTA, your ELD will track that automatically for you. It gives you a lot of peace of mind as an owner whenever you hire a driver, just being able to see what's going on. You can check his speed. You'll be able to check, obviously, his hours to see, did he drive less than 11 hours? Did he take his break? Did he stay within the 14 hours? Another really cool thing is you can see how long your truck is idling. So I know it's cold outside right now and your driver might want to leave the truck on for an hour or two while he's maybe waiting at the shipper, or maybe he's taking his break, or maybe he's sleeping in his truck and he wants to run the truck all night. The Keep Truckin' ELD will enable you to see how long that your truck is idling. And obviously you don't want your truck idling for any extended period of time because it's bad for the engine and you're going to waste fuel. You're going to waste money on diesel. The one thing you need to know is you do still need to have paper logs in the truck as a backup just in case your ELD stops working. So if you do get pulled over for a safety audit, you might think you're okay. Hey, I got my ELD, no problem. But you can still get dinged for not having paper logs as a backup. The last thing about your ELD, it's related, but it's different from an ELD, is a dash cam. So you have two options for a dash cam. You can do forward facing, or you can do rear facing, or you can have both. Forward facing, I would definitely recommend. That way, if there's ever a collision, ever an accident, ever a question, you'll have video footage of what was happening in front of the truck. The rear facing dash cam, I've heard of a lot of big companies, especially with CDL tractors, they have the inward facing dash cam, and I know a lot of drivers do not like that. It's quite the invasion of privacy. You really feel like you're always being watched. I guess the big companies have a liability issue with their drivers, maybe being distracted and talking on their phone and checking text messages while they're driving, so they want to be able to see what's going on with the driver. But if I were a driver, I would not want an inward facing dash cam, but I definitely would recommend getting an outward facing dash cam.
To what you think